Well, thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World this one. I'm Adhya Juneja and this is Speed News. Let's start with all the stories making headlines today. President Donald Trump has said that the United States and Iran could sign a peace deal as soon as this weekend. But Iran countered that it had not reached a final decision on an agreement. Iranian media reported Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghei as saying that large parts of the text under negotiation have been finalized, but Iran would not compromise on its red lines. Earlier, Trump told reporters at the White House that US has made a great settlement of the war with Iran, adding that Vice President J.D. Vance could sign it for the United States. The state funeral of Iran's late Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, killed by US-Israeli strikes on the first day of the West Asia War, has been postponed until the end of June or early July. Iran had earlier said it planned to hold the three-day event in early Muharram, but Tehran Mayor Ali Reza Zaghani has now said that the ceremony had been postponed until after the first 10 days of Muharram to allow the faithful to complete their annual mourning of the Imam Hussein. India has urged a halt on strikes on shipping in West Asia after 3 US attacks on Indian crude tankers this week, including one that killed 3 sailors. Indian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ranveer Jaiswal told reporters that attacks must cease, calling for dialogue and diplomacy. The deaths are the first reported since a US blockade on Iran-linked shipping began on 13th of April. Iran has condemned the US attacks on commercial vessels that killed at least 3 Indian nationals, calling them armed robbery and state piracy. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghei extended condolences to the families of the slain sailors and urged the international community to hold the United States accountable. Senior Hamas figure and co-founder Hassan Yusuf has been released by Israeli authorities in the occupied West Bank after being held without trial for more than 2 years. His son Owais Yusuf said the 71-year-old was freed near the southern West Bank city of Hebron and taken to a hospital in Ramallah, where he resides. Hassan Yusuf co-founded Hamas in the 1980s along with Sheikh Ahmed Yassin and other Palestinian members of the Muslim Brotherhood. He had been held in Israeli administrative detention since October 2023, shortly after the Hamas attack on Israel that sparked the war in Gaza. The United Nations says violence by Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank has reached record levels with an average of 6 daily attacks causing casualties or damage. UN Chief's spokesman, citing the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, says the number of such attacks this year has surpassed 1,000. He added that settler attacks last week injured more than 30 Palestinians and caused widespread damage to property, critical infrastructure and livelihoods. Parts of the Pentagon briefly went into a lockdown after a possible hazardous material incident, which has now been ruled as a false alarm. According to a Pentagon statement, precautionary safety measures were activated after a potential air quality issue. However, subsequent testing confirmed no hazard exists, leading to resumption of normal operations. The war in Ukraine has crossed a major milestone lasting longer than the First World War. It has now continued for 1,569 days, extending the length of the 1914-1918 war. The war began after Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022. Meanwhile, Russian authorities are claiming that 2 people were killed and 10 others were injured in the latest Ukrainian attacks on Russia's Bryansk border region. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer faces an unprecedented challenge to his leadership as 2 top ministers quit in the last 24 hours. Both Defence and Armed Forces ministers have resigned over differences on military spending, piling pressure on Starmer to step down. Defence Secretary John Healey resigned after he alleged that Starmer's defence investment plan risked making Britain less safe. Hours later, Armed Forces Minister Al Khans also resigned, accusing Starmer of failing to adequately support military personnel and invest in defence. Well, Starmer has named Security Minister Dan Jarvis as Britain's Defence Minister. Starmer also replied to outgoing Defence Secretary John Healey in a letter saying his government has delivered the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War and is committed to keeping Britain secure. Starmer defends Labour's military spending plan, says he is committed to keeping Britain secure. In a statement, Starmer claimed his Labour government is delivering the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. But despite delays, Starmer says he will punish the controversial defence investment plan before a NATO summit in Turkey on 7th of July. US Park Police has opened an investigation into giant markings of the number 8647 on the grass of the National Mall. The Justice Department has claimed previously that the numbers 8647 constitute a threat to US President Donald Trump, where 86 is meaning to kill and 47, which is a reference to Trump being the 47th president. The White House has unveiled the huge fighting arena known as the Claw that will host an Ultimate Fighting Championship bout on President Trump's 80th birthday and the 250th anniversary of US independence. A 92-foot-tall structure taller than the White House itself has been built on the historic South Lawn. In the center is the so-called Octagon, the 8-sided cage where 14 UFC fighters will battle it out in front of Trump in the unprecedented event on Sunday night. Thousands of Albanians protested in Tirana against the development of a luxury resort planned by US President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and demanded the resignation of Prime Minister Edi Rama. Demonstrators waved Albanian flags and held banners reading "Albania is not for sale," while chanting "Rama resign" outside the Prime Minister's office. The project, expected to cost around €5 billion, has provoked outrage in the Balkan country because of its location near a protected wetland home to flamingos, seals and sea turtle nesting sites. China has turned up the heat on the Philippines. In a sharp diplomatic move, Beijing has imposed sanctions on Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro, accusing him of making what it called erroneous remarks, that harmed China's interest and damaged bilateral ties. China has also barred his wife and child from entering mainland China, Hong Kong and Macau. Beijing says the measures are necessary to protect its sovereignty, security and development interests. However, it did not specify exactly which governments triggered this action. Rescue teams battled heavy rain and persistent aftershocks in the southern Philippines on Friday as the death toll from a powerful earthquake climbed to 55. The magnitude 7.8 quake struck off the coast of Mindanao on Monday, toppling buildings, triggering landslides and prompting tsunami alerts across the region. Authorities said 8 more deaths had been confirmed and taking the overall toll to 55. Search and rescue crews continued clearing blocked roads and combing devastated areas for survivors, while 31 people remain missing. Japan's flagship H-3 rocket carrying 6 small satellites lifted off Friday. Friday's launch comes after the H-3 rocket failed to launch a geolocation satellite into orbit in December due to engine failure. South Korea's former president Yoon Suk-yeol was sentenced to 30 years in prison for sending drones into North Korea. Prosecutors argue that the drones were sent to create a pretext for his disastrous martial law declaration in 2024. This sentence comes after Yoon was given life in jail in February for leading an insurrection to paralyze South Korea's National Assembly with his martial law declaration. Three people lost their lives after a devastating fire tore through a residential building in Delhi's Tughlaqabad in the early hours of Friday. According to officials, multiple distress calls reporting flames and trapped occupants began pouring in shortly after 2:35 a.m. IST. Firefighters rushed to the scene and found a ground plus 5-story building engulfed in smoke with access severely hampered by the congested lane leading to the property. Preliminary findings indicate that the fire may have originated from vehicles parked within the premises. Oracle has warned customers about a critical security flaw in its PeopleSoft software, a day after the hacking group Shiny Hunters claimed responsibility for a large-scale cyber attack campaign. The vulnerability can reportedly be exploited over the internet without requiring a password, allowing attackers to gain unauthorized access to systems. Google-owned cybersecurity firm Mandiant says the flaw has already been used to target more than 100 organizations worldwide, with many victims linked to the higher education sector. South Korean regulators have imposed a record $400 million fine on e-commerce giant Coupang over a massive data breach that exposed the personal information of more than 34 million customers. Authorities said a former employee was able to access names, email addresses, phone numbers, shipping details and order histories during the months-long breach uncovered in December 2025. The penalty, one of the largest ever issued under South Korea's privacy laws, was handed down by the country's Personal Information Protection Commission. Anthropic has admitted it made the wrong trade-off after facing criticism over hidden restrictions in its newly released Cloud Fable 5 AI model. Researchers discovered that some requests were being quietly redirected to a less capable model without users being informed, particularly for tasks related to AI development. The company had already imposed safeguards on cybersecurity, biology and chemistry queries, citing national security and safety concerns. Following the backlash, Anthropic says it will now clearly notify users whenever a request is refused or routed to another model. Mexico beats South Africa 2-0 in a drama-filled opening match of the World Cup at the Estadio Azteca, kicking off the biggest ever edition of the global footballing showpiece. 3 players were sent off, 2 from South Africa and 1 from Mexico, in front of a capacity crowd of 80,000 spectators. The Azteca created history, which became the first stadium in the world to host games at 3 World Cups. Japanese football team has suffered a blow 3 days before their team's opener against the Netherlands in the FIFA World Cup with injury. Captain Wataru Endo has been ruled out of the tournament and has announced his international retirement. The Liverpool midfielder pulled out of the tournament after failing to recover from a foot injury and was replaced in Japan's court by Borussia Shuto Machino. The 33-year-old Endo said he was frustrated at not being able to play but backed his team to impress. Asian markets extended their rally on Friday as investors bet on a possible breakthrough in efforts to end the West Asia conflict. Japan's Nikkei jumped more than 4%, while South Korea's Kospi surged over 8% in one of its strongest sessions this year. Australian shares also advanced, helped by improving risk sentiment across global markets. Investors were encouraged by signs of progress in talks involving Iran, easing concerns about a prolonged regional crisis. The optimism helped drive broad-based buying across Asian equity markets to end the week on a stronger note. Oil prices extended losses on Friday after U.S. President Donald Trump called off planned military strikes against Iran. Brent fell more than 1% to around $89 a barrel, while crude dropped below $87. The move came as investors dialed back concerns over an immediate escalation in the conflict between Washington and Tehran. Markets were also encouraged by signs of progress in diplomatic talks, though uncertainty remains over the prospects of a final agreement. Despite the recent declines, traders continue to monitor risks to global energy supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. Gold prices edged lower on Friday and were heading for a weekly loss as investors weighed persistent inflation pressures and the risk of higher U.S. interest rates. Spot gold traded near $4,201 an ounce and was down almost 3% for the week. Markets continue to assess the impact of stronger-than-expected U.S. inflation data, which has boosted expectations that the Federal Reserve could raise rates later this year. Traders are currently pricing in a 60% chance of a rate hike by December. While gold is often seen as a hedge against inflation, higher interest rates tend to reduce the appeal of the non-yielding metal. SpaceX priced the biggest ever U.S. initial public offering at $135 per share. Well, this makes Elon Musk's rocket and spacecraft manufacturer one of the world's most valuable companies. The IPO raised a record $75 billion, valuing the space satellite and AI provider at $1.77 trillion. SpaceX will rank 7th among U.S.-listed firms when its shares began trading on the Nasdaq on Friday, though it lost money last year and other mega-caps far outpace its revenue. The sale breaks the previous record for the largest ever IPO held by state-run oil giant Saudi Aramco, which raised $25.6 billion on Riyadh's exchange in December 2019. Well, that is it in this edition. News and updates will continue on the other side. Keep watching WION World is One.